Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another round of World Talks. My name is Don Arleth. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced on Saturday that the goal of the war being waged against Palestinian Hamas is clearly to destroy Hamas's military and political capabilities and to return the hostages home. Netanyahu noted that the decision to launch the ground operation was made unanimously by both the War Cabinet and the Security Cabinet. According to the Israeli Prime Minister, the war will be long and difficult. He also stressed that there is no other way. Netanyahu also said that those who accuse Israel of war crimes are hypocrites. Meanwhile, assessing the war in the Middle East, Israeli army troops who are conducting limited operations in the Gaza Strip flew the national flag on one of the captured buildings there on Saturday, the first such incident since 2005. When Tel Aviv withdrew its forces from the territory, the Jerusalem Post reported on that. And now, here to discuss these developments and what we can expect in the days ahead is Senya Veljdberg, social activist. Hello, and thanks for joining us tonight on World Talks.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
Yes, now, although the full ground invasion has yet to fully commence, Netanyahu said that the next phase of the war is underway. Now, do you believe that we will see this full-scale ground invasion maybe in the week ahead?
I'm not sure what do you mean by full-scale ground invasion.
Well,
How many troops do you expect to find there?
Well, we've been told, I mean, you see here in the media from various outlets that since the beginning, Benjamin Netanyahu has been wanting to send ground troops in to completely destroy Hamas, completely destroy the tunnels that they've built and the infrastructure that will completely eliminate their possibility to do what they did on October 7th. That is yet to take place. We do see these limited military operations. We see massive airstrikes. But I think many of us in the world are expecting Israeli ground troops to go into the northern Gaza Strip and potentially occupy the area until they're able to destroy the infrastructure, as your prime minister has said, so that Hamas can no longer have the ability to wage war.
Okay, I see what you mean. I'm not sure how many is full scale, but obviously the Israeli army needs to get in because the Hamas uses hospitals in order to build underground bases. That means that the Israeli army needs to destroy those caves, which have 4 or 5 stories by now. It's like a whole building under the hospitals. And there are 2 ways to do it. One is to bombard them from the air, which is not well accepted by the international community, and we have to consider that. And the second is actually to get in and to conquer those areas and smoke Hamas out or flood those tunnels or any other way. I'm not sure exactly how the Israeli army is planning to do it. Obviously, that's classified information, so it's a good thing that I don't know the plans. But there are a few ways. I think all of them include getting more troops into Gaza. There is, of course, another way, is just to cut all humanitarian aid from the north, make sure all humanitarian aid gets only to the south, to get all the civilians to the south, and the Hamas will be left without their human shields, because the Hamas is using their population as human shields, and obviously that's a big problem for the Israeli army. And one of the ways the Israeli army is trying to fight them is by moving the population closer to the Egyptian border to the south. And that way Hamas has much less civilians to hide behind. But they're still hiding under the hospitals. And that is a big problem that I don't see how it's solved without a ground operation.
Right. And when that invasion, if you will, of the north does commence, there's probably still civilians that haven't gone down to the south. And there will be a certain amount of collateral damage. Is that being talked about in Israeli society, exactly how much collateral damage is acceptable to go ahead and achieve the goal of taking out Hamas?
Well, there are different opinions in the Israeli society. Some people say that we need to minimize the collateral damage. Others say that we need to worry about our people, because if the Hamas uses their population as human shield, it is the Hamas problem, and we can't lose our soldiers just because they're doing it. Because if we keep losing soldiers because they're doing it, they will just keep doing that, and in the future we'll have more civilians used as human shield. Only when the terror organizations will understand that using civilians as human shield does not work, they will stop. That is the first argument for the collateral damage. The second argument is that if you listen to the Palestinians, if you listen to what they're saying, not only in Gaza, in the West Bank as well, most of them support Hamas. Most of them were celebrating, handing candy on the streets when they saw what the Hamas did to the Israelis, when they saw all these dead babies, killed children, when they saw how they raped our women. They were celebrating. So, in my opinion, if they stay in the north after they've been told to leave, we have done the maximum possible to make sure they don't get hurt. If they choose to stay, even though they have places to go in the south, that is not our problem anymore. I, for example, refuse to lose one single Israeli soldier because we have to worry about people who chose to stay there, and Hamas uses them as human shield, especially when they support Hamas. This is not our problem anymore. We did what we had to do. And by the way, I'm not just talking about the Israeli army. Every Western army, it could be the French army, the American army, the British army, every Western army fighting against radical Islam has to remember that you are bringing English, French, and Italian to places where you speak Turkish and Arabic and Persian. You bring Western mentality to fight barbarians who don't see human rights, who don't understand what human rights are, who don't care about human rights. And you can't beat them using your Western mentality. For years and years, Israel had that same Western mentality, and this is our mistake. This is exactly what the 7th of October happened, because Hamas knew they could do it, and they assumed that Israel will not overreact. What the Hamas is seeing now, in their eyes, is overreaction. Maybe they weren't sure that their operation will succeed that well on the 7th of October. We obviously were surprised. But if we ever want to have peace in the Middle East, we need to understand that we're dealing with people who respect power. The reason that Dubai made peace with Israel, or Saudi Arabia is considering peace with Israel, because they respect Israel and they see Israel as a country who can beat the enemies. And if we can't beat Hamas using the methods that we need to use, I don't think that there ever will be peace in the Middle East.
How would you rate Benjamin Netanyahu and how he's handled this this whole situation since it unfolded on October 7th? Do you assess him positively, negatively, maybe somewhere in the middle?
In the middle. Look, when it comes to the military operation, on my limited perspective, I think he's doing all right. I think he's doing good. In political perspective, there is a lot of criticism against him. First of all, because he did not take responsibility for what happened, and most Israelis don't like that. But I think he handles the operation so far pretty well. I think he's doing what is expected of him, but he will be judged at the end of this operation, because in the past he claimed that he will destroy Hamas, and then he stopped. He just stopped the operation. He listened to the critics of the world, and he decided to stop the operation and manage the conflict instead of winning. And it drew a lot of criticism against him from the right wing, but after what happened on 7th October, most of the leftists in Israel became right wing, because you can't see those pictures and still believe you can do peace with those barbarians, those people who celebrate death. And many of the people in Gaza, by the way, they comment on our Facebook pages. I have a lot of comments from them. And they write us directly, we love death and you love life, and this is why we're going to win. And I'm not talking about Hamas, I'm talking about the civilians there. So most Israelis support the complete destruction of Hamas now. Nobody believes that peace can be done with them. And if Netanyahu is not going to finish this war with a total victory, I don't think he's going to stay prime minister anymore. I don't think he has any chance.
Right now, he's told Israelis to prepare for a long war. Now, if history is our guide, I don't know. Would you be able to shed some light on that, based on what needs to be achieved? And I mean, you know the situation very good on the ground. What does that mean, a long war?
Look, it's all a question of how aggressive Israel can be, because if Israel could lock the borders completely, not letting anything get into Gaza, just like during the Second World War, the British and the Americans would do to the Nazis, no food, no water, nothing, this war can be over in 2 weeks, because the Hamas will simply get out of their holes, raising their hands, because they're going to be starving. But since we're living in a different time where you can't do that, that war could last a year. I think the intense part of the fighting is going to last between 2 or 3 months, because I don't think it's going to take longer than that. But the less intense part of fighting, you know, some Hamas still shooting from some holes, and some leftovers of Hamas will be here and there. It could take more than a year. It all depends upon how aggressive you are. Imagine if Hamas would have attacked Bashar Assad in Syria that way. I don't think Gaza would have been left standing by now. I think it would be totally destroyed, and the war would be over in 2 days. So it all depends upon how aggressive Israel is going to be. History shows that Israel is not very aggressive, unfortunately. And so I think it's going to take about 2 months of an intense fighting, and then it would be slow fighting and more peaceful.
And at the same time, the more aggressive the war really is, it also weighs big on international public opinion, and the perception of Israel as an aggressor rather than a victim. Are people concerned about that?
Yes, people in Israel are concerned about that, because people in Israel realize you can have the strongest army in the Middle East, but if you can't use it, it's worthless. And the Hamas, unfortunately, is doing propaganda for years and years, and Israel have not been doing propaganda at all to tell its story, even though Israel is, well, to anyone who actually reads what the Palestinians are saying, I'm not even asking people to read what the Israelis are saying, just read what the Palestinians are saying. Mm-hmm. They openly say that all Jews in the Middle East needs to be killed. If you support the Palestinians, yeah, you're a hypocrite, or just dumb. I'm sorry, but I don't have any other option for you, because just listen to what they're saying. And unfortunately, only now, after the 7th of October, Israel really, really realized that you need to tell your story to the world, because if you don't, the world is going to hear only the Palestinian story. And if you read CNN, for example, they focus a lot about what happens to Gaza, because Israel does not create any other headline, respond to most of the things, thinking, well, we're the right side, we know we're right, we know they're barbarians, the world needs to see that. Unfortunately, it does not work that way. And Israel begins to understand that, and the Israeli public pushes to make we call it hasbara. It's like explaining your side of the story in order for people to realize what is really happening here. One of the storylines, one of the facts we're showing is that the West, unfortunately, is going to be next, because this radical extreme Islam is going to come to every European country which lets it come into it. And we see this today in Belgium, we see it in France, we see it in Sweden, we see it in Netherlands, we see it in many other countries. It's growing slow, but eventually it will lead exactly to the same. And this is where we need the West to understand that Israel is part of the West, and we're in the same war. I see a demonstration of the LGBTQ community saying queers for Palestine, not realizing that if you were a queer in Palestine, you would be thrown off the roof. Mm-hmm. That is if you're lucky enough not to be raped before that. That is a fact. Right. Well, you can check it yourself. And yet those people, it's like saying a chicken would support KFC or something. I'm sorry, this is retarded. And yet people do that because there isn't enough information about what's happening there. And Israel should start investing in this information. I'm pushing towards it. I'm meeting the Minister of Diaspora now, and I'm talking about it with the Minister of Foreign Affairs for pretty long.
Senya, we have to end our conversation right there. I really appreciate your insight on the matters, and I look forward to speaking with you in the future. Senya, Velldberg, thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
And that's all the time we have for now here on World Talks. Thanks for watching, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.